Hi, my name is Chef Nathan Davis, and today we're going to make my gluten-free, flourless chocolate torte. The first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and get our oven preheating to 325 or 350. In this case today we're going to do it at 325 because I don't have anything else to cook in the oven. We're going to need 2 mixing bowls. You can use glass, plastic, or metal. The only time you'll need either a glass, a porcelain, or a metal bowl is when we're going to melt the chocolate and the butter together. So you will need something that you can use on the double boiler for that. We're going to use 4 eggs. We're going to use half a pound of butter. I'm using Amish butter. We're going to use half a pound of dark chocolate chips. Anywhere from 60 to 70% chocolate is what you're looking for. If you don't like it that intense, of course you can use milk chocolate or something a little bit lighter as well. In this case, we're going to use Ghirardelli dark chocolate chips. They come in a 10-ounce bag. I eat a small handful and then I got exactly 8 ounces left. We're going to use half a cup of brown sugar and half a cup of espresso. I use fresh brewed espresso from my machine. If you don't have one, you can either use leftover coffee from that morning if you want to save it and put it aside, or you can use the quick brew Bustelo espresso packets or whatever kind of espresso packet that you'd like to use. Cold brew, it pretty much just depends on what type of flavor and how intense you want it to be on that flavor as well. I love espresso, so I like to do just a straight up double espresso right at half a cup. Works out perfect every time. You're also going to need a deep dish to cook the torte in. You're going to also use a cake pan as well. So we'll actually set the cake pan into your other dish and then we'll fill it up with water just a little bit because we're going to cook this in a water bath in the oven. Our oven preheating is we're going to go ahead and start melting our butter and our chocolate in our double boiler on the stove top. So as you can see, I have a nice pot right here with a little bit of water in there, and we're simply just going to add this nice glass bowl right on top of it. We're going to pour in our butter first. I like to do the butter first. That way it starts to melt before the chocolate does, because if your chocolate gets too hot, it'll split and separate, and it'll be a little bit greasy. So then we're going to add our chocolate chips. And then we're going to place this on the stove over about a medium heat, medium high, and once it starts boiling, we'll turn it down just a little bit. Now that we got our chocolate and our butter melting together on our double boiler, we're going to go ahead and grease our cake pan. So we're going to take a small piece of butter just like this, and that's already slightly warmed, where we can spread it around really good, and then we're just going to evenly coat our cake pan with our butter. You can use pan spray as well. I don't recommend using an olive oil spray or the spray that has flour in it, as we're keeping this a gluten-free, flourless dark chocolate torte. So one of the things you'll hear me constantly say as you guys watch my videos on my channel is the technique is the recipe. Most of the things that I'm going to be doing for y'all, I have simplified to where you can do them at home with minimal ingredients, but still making it from scratch with great quality products, and you're going to get great results if you follow the recipes exactly. So what does that mean? The method is the recipe. A lot of times you can get all the right ingredients, but if you don't stop and slow down and do exactly as the recipe says and follow the techniques, that's why sometimes we wonder, I did everything it said, I did all the ingredients, but it's those small little technique steps that I'm gonna make sure that we don't skip and leave out of our videos. We're gonna get our eggs going. So we're gonna have the 4 whole eggs. Duck eggs work really well if you're a fan of duck eggs and you can get some locally. I always like to recommend those. They just bake really well. All right, so now that we got our eggs cracked in the bowl, give them a really good whisk. And this is one of those things where you really want to make sure your eggs are really beat together and the yolks and the whites are really incorporated with each other. So now that we have that, we can leave the whisk in it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to melt our espresso into our brown sugar. So I'd keep this super easy and simple. I got my half a cup of espresso measured out. I got my half a cup of brown sugar. I got my getting in that Christmas spirit with my Christmas coffee cup. So I'm going to pour the espresso in here. I'm going to pour my brown sugar in here. And I'm simply going to pop this in the microwave until the brown sugar is melted all the way into the espresso. but you don't want to get it too boiling hot because we do want to make sure it's cooled down when we're going to add it to our chocolate mixture. All right, so while that's in the microwave warming up, what we're gonna do next is we're gonna check on our chocolate. So as you can see, the butter is already slowly starting to melt into the chocolate, and now the water's got a good boil to it, so we're gonna turn it down. And then we're gonna slowly start stirring that chocolate and that butter together, and you can see how the chocolate's already starting to melt. I cut my butter into small pieces, about 1 tablespoon per. That way it'll melt a little bit faster, and then the chocolate won't melt before your butter. Because the key is, again, this is the technique, is the recipe. You really want that butter and that chocolate to be tempered and then evenly mixed together. That way when we go to pour it into our eggs, the chocolate's not too hot and it won't actually curdle our egg, giving us a nice, smooth, velvety consistency. All right, now that we got our brown sugar and our espresso melted, and we have our chocolate and our butter melted together, you can see how beautiful that is, that the chocolate is perfectly incorporated with your butter. So like I said earlier, the key is the method is the recipe. We're just gonna slowly pour this espresso and brown sugar mixture into it. And we're using the spatula from here on out instead of the whisk because we don't wanna whip air bubbles into our torte. And using a spatula will really help do that. When you take all the air bubbles out, it allows it to completely form together in a nice, dense, rich chocolate torte. This looks absolutely perfect, as you can see. And I can hold this with the bottom of my hand. So it's not too hot. It's perfectly right at about room temperature, the chocolate is. If you want to, you can pop a thermometer in it. And on the thermometer, we're reading 120. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this cool for just about 4 or 5 more minutes. And that way, when we add it to our eggs won't start to curdle and it'll be nice and velvety smooth. Okay, now that we have our chocolate mixture with the butter, we poured in the espresso and brown sugar that we melted together in the microwave. We're gonna slowly add this to our 4 eggs, and then we're gonna stir it the whole time. Like I said, very slowly, because the temperature from the eggs will also help cool down the chocolate a little bit. If you pour it too fast, you might curdle your eggs from too much heat at one time. And as you stir, you'll feel your eggs starting to get a little bit thicker. It'll tighten up a little bit, and that's perfectly normal and okay. And it is somewhat of a loose batter, so don't be alarmed if you think, oh, it's not gonna cook right and set up. It will. It's got enough egg in there. It's gonna set. And as you can see how it's starting to get a little bit thicker as I stir. See how nice, and that's just beautiful mixture right there. Woo, man, it looks good, doesn't it? I'm pumped for this one. Could not turn out any better. So we got our pan, our cake pan that we rub with the butter inside our deep pan as well, casserole pan, whatever you want to call it. And then we're gonna slowly just kind of pour that chocolate in. And then I'm the kind of guy, if I make it, I'm using every bit of it out of this bowl. So I will scrape it. If you got kids like I do, they can lick the spoon. I do. So good. All right, so I got my water right here. And we're gonna pour that water just like this. And you wanna do it about halfway up. Perfect, right at halfway. And what this does is it cooks with indirect heat, so that way the heat's not right on the pan. All right, we're gonna put that on our middle shelf. We place that on our middle shelf, and we're gonna cook it for 50 minutes. While our torte's in the oven cooking, we're gonna go ahead and make our mixed berry compote to go with it. You can use blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, strawberries. So today I had some blueberries and some strawberries that I need to use, so I'm gonna use these. And the more ripe they are, the better they're gonna be for jam anyways, because they're gonna be a little bit sweeter. So we're gonna take our 1 cup of mixed berries. We have 1/4 cup of sugar, And then we have half a lemon. We're gonna give it a little bit of squeeze. You could squeeze just use the juice, but I like to throw the lemon in there to get the flavor off that rind and let it all cook together. And we're only gonna make 1 cup of fruit right now because about half this torte's gonna go in the freezer, and then this will be enough to eat the rest. So we wanna make sure that if we're not gonna use the torte the night of the whole thing, it freezes very, very well, so you can always save it for another time. So once we get all our ingredients in the pan, as you can see here, we're gonna transfer it to the stovetop on medium-high heat. And then once it comes to a small boil, we'll go ahead and lower it down to medium to low heat, let it cook for about 15 minutes, and then we'll transfer it into a dish, pop it in the fridge, and then by the time our torte cools in a couple hours, it'll be ready to go. As you can see, our compote is slowly starting to boil, so we're gonna turn it down to medium-low heat. Now let that cook down for another 10 to 15 minutes. All right, it looks like our berry compote is now ready. I like to leave it a little bit liquidy because it's gonna tighten up a little bit as it cools. So always keep that in mind. As anything with sugar sauce that you're making, after you put it in the fridge and it cools down, it's gonna be a little bit thicker than it appears already. So then we're gonna transfer this right to the fridge. When I make this chocolate torte for each job that we do, we actually make everything on site in the homes. So I actually take it and put it in the freezer, and then in 2 hours, it's cooled perfectly. It pops right out of the pan. I slice it, put it on the plate, a little bit of that delicious mixed berry compote, and we got our flourless dark chocolate torte with mixed berry compote. And we're gonna plate one as soon as it's ready.